Lily Cooper's fingers trembled around the last dollar bill her mother had given her for Friday treats. The 8-year-old stood frozen on that Montana roadside, staring at the wooden crate where something white and gray shivered in the December cold. $1, the man said, his smile wrong somehow. It's dying anyway. The creature's eyes met hers, clouded, fading, desperate. Everyone else walked past. Too weak, too far gone. Not worth it. Lily's hand moved before her mind caught up. The dollar changed hands. She lifted the trembling bundle, feeling its heartbeat flutter against her chest like a dying moth. So cold, so small. The man's laughter followed her down the street. But she didn't look back. She didn't know she'd just bought a wolf. She didn't know that wolf would one day save her life. She only knew something needed her. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. 2 years before the dollar, Lily Cooper had a father. Nathan Cooper would lift her onto his shoulders during their evening walks through the Montana woods, teaching her to read animal tracks in the snow. "Look into their eyes, sweetheart," he'd say, crouching beside deer prints. "Animals don't lie. They can't." That last morning, he'd kissed her forehead while she pretended to sleep. "Love you, little one. Be good for Mom." By afternoon, the sheriff stood on their porch with his hat in his hands. Ranger Cooper had fallen during a pursuit, a tragic accident in the mountains. They'd found his body 3 days later. Grace Cooper buried her husband on a Tuesday and returned to work on Wednesday. What choice did she have? Now, 2 years later. Grace worked the night shift at the diner and cleaned hotel rooms during the day. The math was simple and cruel. 2 jobs barely covered rent. Her daughter's heart medication came before food. The hospital bills from Lily's condition, a birthday present from genetics, stacked higher each month. Lily wore her father's old Ranger jacket to school, sleeves rolled up 4 times. The other kids whispered, "Poor girl. Charity case." The teacher pretended not to notice when Lily ate alone in the cafeteria, her free lunch tray a beacon of shame. Only Emma Harper sat with her sometimes. Emma, whose own lunchbox was nearly as empty, whose shoes had the same duct tape repairs. "Your mom working tonight?" Emma asked one Friday afternoon. Lily nodded. Mom was always working. That evening, Lily walked home alone through the December cold, her breath forming white clouds. The dollar in her pocket was meant for a candy bar from the gas station, her one treat for the week. She'd been saving it, thinking about which kind to buy. Then she saw the man. He stood beside a battered truck, a wooden crate at his feet. The hand-painted sign read, "Puppies, cheap." But these weren't puppies. Even Lily could tell something was wrong. They barely moved, their coats matted and dull. One creature lay separated from the others, pushed into the corner, white and gray, smaller than the rest, shaking. "That one's garbage," the man said, noticing her stare. His face was weathered, his smile sharp. "Won't last the night. $1 and it's yours. Otherwise, it's going in the river." Lily's hand found the dollar bill. The man's eyes gleamed. "Your funeral, kid." She gathered the creature carefully, feeling how light it was, how its ribs pressed against thin skin. Its heartbeat was thread thin under her palm. The walk home seemed longer in the fading light. The bundle in her arms barely breathed. Lily held it closer, trying to share her warmth. She didn't think about what her mother would say. She didn't think about how they'd feed it when they barely fed themselves. She only thought, not today. You don't die today. The trailer door stood dark and locked. Mom wouldn't be home until morning. Lily and the dying creature sat alone on the cold step, waiting. Lily sat on the cold steps until her legs went numb. The creature in her arms had stopped shivering, whether from her body heat or because it was dying. She couldn't tell. She tried giving it water from her cupped hands. It didn't drink. At 2 in the morning, headlights swept across the gravel driveway. Grace Cooper climbed out of her old sedan, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. She saw her daughter on the steps, and fear replaced the fatigue. "Lily, what?" "I couldn't leave it. Mom." The words tumbled out. "Please, just tonight. Just one night." Grace looked at the bundle in her daughter's arms, at Lily's face, the first real emotion she'd seen there since Nathan died. The first spark of anything besides hollow-eyed grief. "One night," Grace whispered. "But if it's sick..." "Thank you." Lily was already moving inside. They made a bed from towels in the bathtub. The warmest room in the trailer. Lily wrapped the creature in her father's old flannel shirt, the one that still smelled like him. She sat on the bathroom floor and didn't sleep. Every few minutes, she'd lean over to check if it was still breathing. Grace found her there at dawn, dark circles under her eyes, hand resting on the small rise and fall of the creature's chest. "We need to take it to a vet," Grace said quietly. Dr. Carter Mitchell's clinic sat on the edge of town, a weathered building that had been there longer than Lily had been alive. Grace called him before they left. He owed her that much. The veterinarian met them at the door, his gray hair uncombed, glasses sliding down his nose. He took one look at what Lily carried, and his expression changed. "Bring it to the exam room, quickly." Under the fluorescent lights, the truth became impossible to ignore. The creature's paws were too large, the snout too long, the ears set differently than any dog. Dr. Carter worked in silence, checking vitals, examining teeth, looking at bone structure. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. "Mrs. Cooper, this isn't a dog." "What?" "It's a wolf, gray wolf, to be specific. The white coloring is a genetic variation, leucistic, not albino. You can tell by the eyes." He glanced at Lily, who sat frozen in her chair. "Where did you get it?" "A man on Highway 93, Lily whispered. "He was selling them." Carter's jaw tightened. "That man is a criminal. Trafficking protected wildlife is a federal offense." He turned back to the animal, his hands gentle despite his words. "This pup is maybe 6 to 8 weeks old, far too young to be separated from its mother. It's severely malnourished, has parasites, and its body temperature is dangerously low." He paused. "If I'm being honest, I'd give it a 20% chance of survival." The room went silent, except for the hum of the overhead lights. "What do we do?" Grace asked. Carter removed his glasses, cleaning them slowly. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Nathan saved my life 3 years ago. Did he ever tell you that?" Grace shook her head. "I had a heart attack in the middle of nowhere, miles from any trail. Nathan found me, carried me 2 miles to his truck, stayed with me until the ambulance came." Carter's voice cracked. "He told me that day, life is precious. Doc, every single one." He looked at Lily, really looked at her, saw Nathan's eyes staring back at him. "I can't bring your husband back, Grace, but I can try to save what your daughter loves." He picked up the wolf pup carefully. "It'll need round-the-clock care for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Special formula, antibiotics, constant monitoring. I can provide the medical treatment for free. That's what I owe Nathan. But the daily care, the feeding every few hours, keeping it warm, that falls to you. Lily stood up. I'll do it. Whatever it takes. Lily, Grace started. Mom, please, I can do this. I promise. Grace looked at her daughter. Really looked. Saw her standing straight for the first time in 2 years. Saw purpose where there had been only emptiness. What happens after 8 weeks? Grace asked. We can't keep a wolf. No, Carter agreed. You can't. The Montana Wildlife Center will need to be notified eventually. But let's focus on keeping it alive first. He began preparing injections, his movements precise. If, and it's a big if, this pup survives, it'll form a strong bond with whoever cares for it. That's both a blessing and a problem. Lily watched him work, her small hands clenched into fists. Will it hurt? The injection's a little, but it's too weak to fight much. Carter administered the first shot. The pup whimpered softly. There we are. You're a tough one, aren't you? Shadow, Lily said suddenly. They both looked at her. Its name is Shadow, because it's quiet, like a shadow. Carter smiled, the first real smile since they'd arrived. Shadow it is. Lily, a bottle of special formula and a feeding syringe. You'll need to feed every 3 hours, even at night. Think you can handle that? Lily nodded, taking the supplies with the solemnity of someone accepting a sacred duty. As they prepared to leave, Carter caught Grace's arm. There's something else you should know. Wolves aren't dogs. Shadow might bond with Lily, might even see her as pack. But wild instincts don't disappear. People won't understand. There will be consequences. Grace looked at her daughter, carefully cradling Shadow in her father's flannel shirt. I know, she said quietly, but sometimes consequences are worth it. Outside, the morning sun broke through the Montana clouds. For the first time since Nathan died, Lily Cooper smiled. Shadow survived the first week, then the second. By the third week, the wolf pup had gained weight, its coat gleaming white-gray under the trailer's dim lights, its eyes cleared, alert and intelligent in a way that made Grace uneasy. This wasn't a dog looking back at her. It was something else entirely. Lily kept her promise. Every 3 hours, day and night. She fed Shadow. She slept on the bathroom floor to be close. Her grades slipped. She was too tired to focus, but the dark circles under her eyes carried a strange pride. Something needed her. Something lived because of her. The neighbors noticed by the second week. Mrs. Patterson lived 2 trailers down, a woman whose husband had left her 20 years ago and whose bitterness had fermented into something toxic. She stood on her porch that morning, watching Lily play with Shadow in the small yard, and her face twisted. By afternoon, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up to the Coopers' trailer. Mrs. Patterson appeared moments later, arms crossed, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. I told you they had a wild animal. That thing is dangerous. There are children here. The deputy, young and uncomfortable, took notes while Grace stood in the doorway, still wearing her diner uniform. Shadow was inside, mercifully quiet. Ma'am, is it true you're keeping a wolf on the property? We're caring for an injured animal under veterinary supervision, Grace said carefully. Dr. Carter Mitchell is monitoring the situation. It doesn't matter what Mitchell says. Mrs. Patterson interrupted. That creature will kill someone. It'll tear that little girl apart in her sleep. Is that what you want? You already got your husband killed with his stupid ranger nonsense. Now you're going to let your daughter die too." Grace's face went white. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Patterson, I want it gone." The older woman continued, stepping closer. "I'm filing a formal complaint. You have children living in fear because of your negligence." After the deputy left, promising to look into it, Mrs. Patterson didn't leave. She stood in the Coopers' driveway, looking at their trailer with undisguised contempt. "You're trash," she said, just loud enough for Grace to hear. "Trash raising trash, and that monster you're keeping will prove it." That night, someone threw a rock through the trailer's window. Grace found it on the kitchen floor the next morning, a note wrapped around it. "Get rid of it, or we will," by the fourth week. Flyers appeared on telephone poles throughout the neighborhood. "Protect our children. Remove the beast." Mrs. Patterson's phone number listed at the bottom. The town meeting happened on a Wednesday evening. Grace couldn't get off work, so Lily sat alone in the back row of the community center. Shadow left behind with a neighbor girl too young to know better than to help. Mrs. Patterson stood at the microphone, her voice carrying righteous indignation. "This isn't about being cruel. This is about safety. That Cooper woman, we all know her situation. We all feel sorry for her, but feeling sorry doesn't mean endangering our families. That animal she's keeping is a predator, a killer. It's in its nature." "There's been no incidents," someone pointed out. "Yet," Mrs. Patterson shot back. "There's been no incidents yet. Are we going to wait until a child is mauled, until someone dies?" She paused for effect. "That girl already lost her father. Do we want to watch her get torn apart by the very things she's foolish enough to love?" The vote was close. 48 for allowing Shadow to stay under supervision, 52 for immediate removal. Lily sat through it all, silent, her hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood. Sheriff Walton appeared at the trailer 2 days later. He was a big man, past 50, with a face that might have been kind once but had settled into permanent suspicion. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Mrs. Cooper, you've been given 48 hours to surrender the wolf to animal control. Failure to comply will result in a fine of $5,000 per day and possible charges of child endangerment. You could lose custody." Grace's hand found the doorframe for support. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that you're harboring a dangerous wild animal in a residence with a minor." Walton's eyes were cold. "Look, I get it. Your kid's attached. But this isn't a pet. It's a wolf. Eventually, it'll do what wolves do. Dr. Carter has certified." "I don't care what Carter's certified. The town voted. You've got 48 hours. He turned to leave, then paused. "And Mrs. Cooper, even if you could fight this legally, which you can't afford to do, you'd lose. Save yourself the trouble." After he left, Grace sat at the kitchen table with their bank statement, $217 in their account. Rent was $350. Lily's medication alone cost $180 a month. The hospital was threatening collections. $5,000 per day might as well have been $5 million. She looked at her daughter, who sat on the floor with Shadow's head in her lap. The wolf pup, growing larger each day, no longer quite a pup, watched Lily with devoted attention. "Mom," Lily's voice was small, "are they going to take Shadow away?" Grace couldn't answer. The truth stuck in her throat. At school, things got worse. The flyers had spread beyond the neighborhood. By Monday morning, everyone knew about Wolf Girl. The name followed Lily through the hallways like a curse. Someone had taped a picture of a snarling wolf to her locker with the words, "Your pet will eat you," scrawled across it. In the cafeteria, the popular girls whispered loudly enough to be heard. "I heard it already, bitter. That's why she wears long sleeves. My mom says they're white trash. Of course they'd keep a dangerous animal. The thing probably has rabies. She probably has rabies now." Lily sat alone with her free lunch tray, the bright red ticket that announced her poverty to everyone who cared to notice. She forced herself to eat, though the food tasted like dust. Emma Harper slid into the seat across from her. Emma's lunch wasn't much better, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple, both slightly bruised. "They're just jealous," Emma said quietly. "Of what?" "That you have something to care about. Something that cares about you back." Emma pushed her apple across the table. "Here. You didn't have breakfast?" "Emma, take it. I'm not hungry." That afternoon, someone shoved Lily in the hallway. She fell hard, her books scattering. Laughter echoed off the lockers. "Freak. Monster girl. Maybe the wolf should eat you so we don't have to look at you anymore." Emma helped her up, glaring at the other kids. "Leave her alone." "Oh, look. The two charity cases defending each other. How sweet." That night, Lily came home with a bruise blooming on her cheek. She told her mother she'd fallen. Grace knew better but didn't press. What could she do? Call the school? They had bigger problems. Lily went straight to Shadow, burying her face in the wolf's fur. Shadow, who now stood nearly 2 feet tall at the shoulder, pressed close and made a low sound, not quite a whimper, not quite a growl. Comfort, in whatever form wolves offered it. "Why do they hate you?" Lily whispered. "You haven't done anything wrong." Shadow licked her face, tasting the salt of tears. In the kitchen, Grace stared at the eviction notice that had arrived that afternoon. 3 months behind on rent. They had 30 days to pay or leave. The 48 hours Sheriff Walton had given them was almost up. Outside, Mrs. Patterson stood on her porch, watching the Cooper trailer with satisfaction. Tomorrow, she'd make sure they followed through. Tomorrow, that beast would be gone. She'd already called animal control twice to confirm. The clock was ticking. Shadow survived. More than survived, he thrived. By the 5th week, the transformation was undeniable. The skeletal pup who'd fit in Lily's arms now weighed nearly 30 pounds. His coat, once matted and dull, gleamed white-gray in the winter sun. When he moved, it wasn't with the clumsy stumbling of a sick puppy, but with a grace that was distinctly other. Dr. Carter noticed it during a checkup. "He's not growing like a dog," he said, measuring Shadow's paws. "These are wolf proportions. By 6 months, he'll be 70, 80 pounds, maybe more." Grace watched her daughter with the wolf, saw how Lily's entire world had narrowed to this creature. Every 3 hours still, even though Shadow could eat solid food now, every night. Sleeping on the bathroom floor even though Shadow was healthy enough to be alone. "She's imprinted on him," Carter said quietly. "But Grace, he's imprinting on her too. That's the problem." Shadow didn't bark. That was the first clear sign. Dogs barked, wolves didn't. Instead, Shadow made low sounds in his chest, huffs and quiet growls that meant different things. Lily learned to read them like a language. When she was sad, Shadow would press against her leg and make a sound like a question. When she was happy, his ears would prick forward and he'd make a different sound, almost like a purr. If wolves could purr. He learned her moods through her voice. Grace watched it happen, this uncanny communication. Lily would come home from school. shoulders hunched from another day of isolation, and Shadow would immediately move to her side. He wouldn't jump or demand attention like a dog would. He'd simply be there, solid and warm and present. One evening, Grace found them in Lily's room. Her daughter sat on the floor, back against the bed, reading from her journal. Shadow lay with his head in her lap, eyes half closed, listening. "Today, Emma sat with me again at lunch." Lily read aloud. "The other kids called us both freaks, but Emma said freaks are just people who care about things everyone else is too scared to love. I think she's right. I think that's why I love you, Shadow. Because everyone else was too scared." Shadow made that low sound, and Lily's hand moved to his head, fingers buried in thick fur. Grace backed away before either of them noticed her crying. By week 7, Shadow had learned to knock, not scratch at the door like a dog, but deliberately tap his paw against it in a rhythm, tap, tap, tap. Pause, tap, tap, tap. "Did you teach him that?" Grace asked, amazed. Lily shook her head. "He just started doing it. I think he was watching how we knock." The wolf watched everything, observed with an intelligence that was sometimes unsettling. Grace would catch him studying her as she cooked, his head tilted, analyzing, learning. He'd grown large enough now that he couldn't sleep in Lily's bed without taking up most of the space. He did it anyway. Every night, Grace would check on her daughter and find them curled together, a small girl and an increasingly large wolf, breathing in sync. "Carter says he needs to sleep in the enclosure," Grace mentioned once. "He gets cold out there." Lily said simply, "He's a wolf. He's built for cold." "He's my shadow." Grace didn't push it. How could she? Her daughter was eating again, sleeping through the night, smiling. The wolf had done what months of grief counseling couldn't give Lily a reason to keep going. But the town noticed. And the town remembered its vote. Margaret Cooper arrived on a Tuesday morning in late winter, stepping out of a rental car with 2 suitcases and a pinched expression. Grace hadn't seen her mother-in-law since Nathan's funeral. The older woman had stayed away. Grace knew, because seeing them hurt too much, reminded her too much of what she'd lost. "I came to talk sense into you," Margaret announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "Grace, the whole town is talking. My friends in Seattle sent me articles. You can't seriously be keeping a wolf." "It's complicated. It's insane." Margaret's voice was sharp. "I lost my son. I will not lose my granddaughter because you're too soft-hearted to do what's necessary." Then Lily came home from school, Shadow trotting beside her off-leash. The wolf stayed close, protective, his body between the girl and any potential threat. Margaret stood on the porch, frozen, as her granddaughter approached with a wolf. "Grandma?" Lily's face lit up the first time Grace had seen that kind of joy toward a family member since Nathan died. "You came..." "Lily, get away from that animal. This is Shadow. He won't hurt you. Shadow, sit." The wolf didn't sit. He regarded Margaret with those unsettling golden eyes, assessing. Then, apparently deciding she wasn't a threat, he moved past her into the trailer, Lily following. Margaret grabbed Grace's arm. "That thing could kill her." "He won't. You don't know that. Grace, please, be reasonable." But that night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She heard sounds from Lily's room, her granddaughter's voice, reading aloud. She crept to the door and peered through the crack. Lily sat on her bed, the wolf's head in her lap, reading from what looked like one of Nathan's old journals about wildlife conservation. Shadow's eyes were closed, but his ears tracked every word. Grandpa wrote this before I was born, Lily was saying. He said animals have souls, not the same as people, but souls. He said if you look in their eyes, you can see it. Do you have a soul? Shadow. The wolf opened his eyes and looked at her. Just looked. And in that gaze, Margaret saw something that made her breath catch. Recognition, understanding, devotion. She was crying before she realized it. Deep, silent sobs that shook her shoulders. The next morning, Margaret sat at the kitchen table while Grace made coffee. I had a dream, the older woman said quietly. 5 years ago, before Nathan died. He came to me in it, told me his daughter would be saved by something everyone feared. I thought it was nonsense. Grace set down the coffee carefully. Mom, that wolf, it's a sign from my son. I know how that sounds, but Grace, I know. Margaret's hands trembled around her cup. Nathan sent that creature to protect Lily, to save her. Nathan didn't. I'm not leaving. Margaret's voice was steel beneath the emotion. And I'm not letting anyone take that wolf away from her. I have money saved. Whatever you need. Grace felt something crack open in her chest relief. Maybe, or just the exhaustion of carrying everything alone. Thank you. 2 weeks later, a truck marked Montana Wildlife Center pulled up to the trailer. Rachel Martinez was younger than Grace expected, probably late 20s, with dark hair and a practical braid and eyes that assessed everything. She wore a ranger uniform and moved with the confidence of someone used to handling dangerous animals. Mrs. Cooper, I'm here about the wolf. Grace's stomach dropped. Who reported? Multiple people. It's my job to investigate. Rachel's expression softened. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to see the animal and take a DNA sample. For our records? Shadow was in the yard, lying in the sun while Lily did homework beside him. Rachel stopped short when she saw them. That's a gray wolf. We know. A leucistic gray wolf. The white coloring, Rachel moved closer. Professional curiosity overriding caution. How did you acquire him? Grace told her. The dollar? The roadside? The near-death rescue? As she spoke, Rachel's expression shifted from curiosity to alarm to something like anger. You bought him from a man on the highway. My daughter did. Mrs. Cooper, that man was trafficking protected wildlife. That's a federal crime. Rachel knelt near Shadow, who watched her warily, but didn't move from Lily's side. I need to take a DNA sample. If this wolf came from where I think it did, there are people who need to answer for it. The swab was quick, professional. Shadow tolerated it because Lily held his head and whispered that it was okay. I'll have results in 2 weeks, Rachel said. In the meantime, he stays here. But Mrs. Cooper, you need to understand if this wolf is what I think he is, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Rachel's expression was kind but firm. The kind where he can't stay with you. I'm sorry. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Grace went to work, came home, watched her daughter with the wolf, and waited for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Thursday afternoon. Rachel returned with a folder full of documents and an expression Grace couldn't read. Can we talk inside? They sat at the kitchen table, Grace, Rachel, and Margaret. Lily was at school. Shadow lay under the table, his head on Grace's foot. Shadow's DNA came back. Rachel began. He's from the Northern Rockies wolf population, specifically from a pack that was living in Yellowstone's northern range. She pulled out photos. 2 years ago, that pack was decimated by poachers, 5 wolves killed, 2 pups taken alive. We recovered 1 pup dead. The other was never found. She laid out another photo, a crime scene shot of a man lying in the snow. Ranger uniform partially visible. Grace's vision swam. Nathan. Your husband was investigating that poaching ring when he died. The official report said he fell during a pursuit. But these DNA results triggered a federal review. Rachel's voice was gentle. Mrs. Cooper, I don't think your husband fell. I think he was murdered by the same people who killed that wolf pack. The room tilted. Margaret gasped. Shadow, sensing distress, stood and pressed against Grace's leg. The man who sold Shadow to your daughter, we need you to identify him. Rachel pulled out a series of photos. Do you recognize any of these individuals? Grace's hand shook as she pointed. Him. That one. Hank Brennan. He's wanted on federal charges for wildlife trafficking and suspicion of murder. Rachel looked at Shadow. Your daughter saved the evidence we needed. That wolf's DNA proves he was stolen from federal land. And if Brennan sold him, we can trace him. He killed my husband, Grace whispered. We believe so. And Mrs. Cooper, there's more. Brennan's operation was protected by someone local. We think Sheriff Walton was taking bribes to look the other way. Rachel's expression hardened. This goes deeper than we thought. And now that Shadow's DNA is in the system, those people know there's evidence against them. Are we in danger? I don't know. But Shadow can't stay here. It's not safe for him or for you. Rachel's tone was regretful, but firm. He needs professional care, a facility with security, and frankly, he needs space. He's a wolf. Mrs. Cooper, he's going to get bigger, stronger, wilder. This trailer yard isn't enough. No. Grace's voice was sharp. Lily's lost too much. I know. But loving something sometimes means letting it go. Rachel looked at Shadow, who stared back with those unsettling golden eyes. That wolf bonded with your daughter. That bond probably saved his life. But he's not a pet. He's not even domesticated. And as he matures, his instincts will change. He needs to be with his own kind, in an environment that can handle what he is. Margaret spoke quietly. When? I can give you 2 weeks to prepare. Then he comes with me to the center. Rachel's expression softened. She can visit. I'll make sure of it. But Mrs. Cooper, Grace, this isn't negotiable. Shadow is federally protected wildlife. The law is clear. After Rachel left, Grace sat at the table, staring at nothing. Margaret made tea neither of them drank. When Lily came home, Shadow was waiting at the door like always. The wolf's tail did that subtle wag, and Lily dropped her backpack to hug him. Mom? Lily's voice was cautious. Why do you look sad? Grace pulled her daughter close. Baby, we need to talk about Shadow. And for the second time in 2 years, Grace had to tell her daughter that love wasn't enough to keep what you cherished. Rachel Martinez delivered the news on a Friday afternoon. She stood in the Coopers' small living room, her wildlife center uniform crisp and professional. Her eyes kind but firm. Shadow needs to come with me on Sunday. I've made all the arrangements. The center has a specialized enclosure, trained staff, proper nutrition. It's the best chance for him to develop normally. Lily sat frozen on the couch, Shadow's head resting on her knee. The wolf had grown massive in 3 months, nearly 70 pounds. All lean muscle and wild grace, his white-gray coat gleamed. Healthy now. Beautiful. Nothing like the dying creatures she'd bought for $1. No, the word came out small, powerless. Lily, Rachel said gently, you saved his life. You did something incredible. But he's a wolf. Sweetheart, he needs things you can't give him here. Space to run, other wolves, a life that isn't confined to a trailer yard. He's happy here, with me. I know he loves you. That's obvious to anyone who sees you together. Rachel crouched down to eye level. But love means doing what's best for them, even when it hurts us. Your dad understood that. Nathan Cooper was one of the finest rangers I ever worked with. He always put the animals first, even when it was hard. The mention of her father broke something in Lily. Tears came, silent and steady. Grace wrapped an arm around her daughter. Baby, we don't have a choice. We always have choices, Lily whispered. We're just making the wrong one. That night, Lily couldn't eat. She sat at the table, pushing food around her plate while Shadow lay at her feet. Sensing something wrong, wolves could smell distress. Dr. Carter had told her. They could read human emotion like a language. Shadow knew. Saturday crawled by in excruciating slow motion. Lily spent every minute with Shadow, memorizing things she'd taken for granted, the way his ears perked at certain sounds, how he'd tilt his head when she spoke, the weight of him when he leaned against her leg, the exact texture of his fur under her fingers. Emma came by in the afternoon. She didn't say much, just sat with Lily in the yard while Shadow explored the perimeter fence for the 100th time. It's not fair, Emma said finally. Nothing is. Will you still be able to visit him? Rachel said yes, once a week. Maybe. Lily's voice cracked. But it won't be the same. Emma reached over and held her friend's hand. They sat like that until the sun began to set. Two girls who understood that life took things away, whether you were ready or not. That night, Lily made a decision. She wrote a letter, knowing Shadow couldn't read it, knowing it was foolish, but needing to do something. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her father's old flannel shirt, the one Shadow had slept on that first terrible night. Then she went outside. Shadow was in his enclosure, the sturdy one Dr. Carter had helped them build when the wolf got too big for the bathroom. He stood when he saw her, tail wagging in that distinctly non-dog way wolves had. Less enthusiastic, more measured. Lily opened the gate and stepped inside. The temperature had dropped. Snow was falling, soft and steady, covering everything in white. She sat down on the cold ground, and Shadow immediately moved to her side. She didn't speak. What was there to say instead? She wrapped her arms around him and held on. Shadow pressed close, his warmth cutting through the cold. He made a low sound in his chest, not quite a growl, not quite a whine. Comfort offered in the only way he knew. The snow fell heavier. Lily's tears froze on her cheeks. She thought about all the moments that had led here. The dollar in her hand, the dying creature in the crate, the first time Shadow had looked at her with clear eyes, the morning he'd learned to howl, standing in the yard with his head thrown back. The sound so wild and beautiful, it had made her cry. She thought about her father, who'd taught her to look animals in the eye, who'd said they couldn't lie. Shadow couldn't lie. His devotion was absolute, uncomplicated. He didn't understand Sunday, didn't know what was coming. He only knew that Lily was sad, and he pressed closer, trying to fix what he couldn't understand was broken. Hours passed. Grace came to the window once, saw them there in the snow, and turned away. She couldn't watch. Lily fell asleep there, curled against Shadow's side. The wolf stayed motionless through the night, keeping her warm, keeping watch. When dawn broke cold and gray, she woke to find snow covering them both like a blanket. Sunday morning came too fast. The Wildlife Center's van arrived at 9. Rachel stepped out, accompanied by another staff member, a young man who carried a specialized transport crate. Lily had made herself a promise she wouldn't cry. She would be strong. She would make this easier for Shadow. She broke that promise the moment Rachel opened the gate. "I can't." Lily's voice shattered. "Please. I can't do this." Grace was there, hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know." I'm not strong. If I was strong, I'd be able to keep him. Strength isn't keeping what you love," Grace whispered. "It's letting go when you have to." Rachel approached slowly, respectfully. "Lily, I need you to call him over. He trusts you. If we have to chase him or tranquilize him, it'll be traumatic. Please. One last thing you can do for him." Lily looked at Shadow. He stood at the far end of the enclosure, watching the strangers with clear wariness. But when she called his name, his ears perked. "Shadow. Come." He hesitated. Wolves were smart. He knew something was wrong. "Please," Lily whispered. "Please, come here." Shadow walked to her, each step deliberate. When he reached her, she knelt and wrapped her arms around his neck one final time. "You're going somewhere better?" she told him, the words coming between sobs. "Somewhere you can run and be with other wolves and be what you're supposed to be. Not trapped here with me." She pulled something from her pocket, a lock of her hair, tied with string. She fastened it around his neck like a talisman, knowing the staff would probably remove it, not caring. "Remember me," she whispered. "Please remember me." Rachel and her colleague moved carefully, guiding Shadow toward the crate. The wolf went, confused but trusting. They secured him inside, and Lily heard a sound that would haunt her forever. Shadow's low whine of distress. "Can I ride with him?" Lily asked desperately. "Just to the center." Rachel shook her head. "I'm sorry. It's better this way. Clean break." The van doors closed. Through the small window, Lily could see Shadow's face pressed against the mesh, those intelligent eyes searching for her. The engine started. Lily ran. She couldn't help it. She ran after the van, her feet slipping in the melting snow, her lungs burning. Shadow, Shadow. The van didn't stop. It couldn't. Lily ran until she tripped and fell hard on the gravel road. She lay there, gasping, watching the van disappear around the bend. Grace reached her moments later, lifting her daughter from the ground. Lily collapsed against her mother and sobbed deep, wrenching sounds that came from somewhere ancient and primal. "I know," Grace whispered, holding her tight. "I know, baby. I know." They stood there on the empty road while the snow fell around them. Inside the trailer, Lily's room still smelled like Wolf. His food bowl sat by the door, half full. The flannel shirt lay on her bed where she'd left it. Covered in white fur, Lily didn't eat for 3 days. She barely spoke. She moved through the world like a ghost, hollow-eyed and empty. Emma tried. Grace tried. Even Dr. Carter stopped by, his face etched with concern. Nothing helped. 2 weeks later, Lily collapsed at school. She'd been walking to class when the hallway tilted. Her vision went dark. She woke up in an ambulance, her mother's terrified face hovering above her. The hospital was too bright, too loud. Machines beeped. Nurses moved with practiced efficiency. A doctor she didn't recognize appeared with charts and serious expressions. "Mrs. Cooper, we need to talk." Grace stepped into the hallway, leaving Lily alone with the steady beep of the heart monitor. Through the door, she could hear fragments. "Condition has worsened. Surgery within 4 months. $200,000. When Grace returned, her face was composed, but her hands shook. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, her voice weak. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just routine tests." "Mom, don't lie to me." Grace sat on the edge of the hospital bed. She was quiet for a long time. "Your heart needs surgery. Soon. How much?" "That's not something you need to worry about." "How much?" Grace closed her eyes. "More than we have." Lily turned her face to the wall. Of course. Of course it was. She'd lost Shadow. Now she'd lose everything else too. "Mom, yes. Is Shadow okay?" At the center, Grace's throat tightened. Her daughter was lying in a hospital bed facing surgery they couldn't afford. And she was asking about a wolf. "Rachel says he's doing well. He misses you, but he's adjusting." "Good," Lily whispered. "That's good." She closed her eyes, and Grace wondered how much more heartbreak one small girl could possibly endure. Outside the hospital window, snow continued to fall over Montana, indifferent and endless. The letter arrived 3 weeks after Shadow left. No return address, just Grace's name written in jagged letters. Inside, a single line. "You took something from us. We'll take something from you." Grace threw it away, telling herself it was a prank. Small towns bred petty cruelties. The second letter came a week later. This one had a photo attached to their trailer, taken from across the street. Someone had drawn a red X over the door. Grace called Sheriff Walton. He came by, glanced at the letters with bored disinterest, and shrugged. "Could be anyone. No specific threats. Nothing I can do. Someone is watching my house. Then get better locks." Walton tipped his hat and left. That night, their kitchen window shattered. Grace found a brick on the floor, glass scattered across the linoleum. Lily stood in the doorway of her bedroom, pale and trembling. "It's okay," Grace lied. "Probably neighborhood kids." But it wasn't okay. 2 days later, Emma ran up to Lily after school, breathless and frightened. "There was a man. He followed us from the bus stop. He kept staring at you." "What did he look like?" "Older, mean-looking. He had a truck." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. "He smiled at me, but not like a nice smile. Like he was happy about something bad." Lily told her mother that evening. Grace felt ice slide down her spine. "Don't walk anywhere alone," she said firmly. "Stay with Emma. If you see anyone strange, you run. You understand?" Lily nodded, but her eyes held a question she didn't ask. Run where their trailer offered no safety. The town offered no protection. Where was there to run? The truth came from an unexpected source. Dr. Carter stopped by late one evening, his face grave. "Grace, I heard something today. One of my clients mentioned the Brennan brothers." "Who?" "Hank and Travis Brennan, wildlife traffickers. Hank's the one who sold Shadow to Lily, He's been on the FBI's wanted list for 2 years. His brother Travis just got released from jail on an unrelated charge. Carter's hands clenched. When the Wildlife Center traced Shadow's DNA and reported the trafficking ring, it exposed the Brennans' entire operation. Hank's facing 25 years if they catch him. Grace sat down slowly. You're saying they blame us? I'm saying they're dangerous men who've lost everything, and they know where you live. The sheriff, Walton, Carter's laugh was bitter. Grace, Walton's been on their payroll for years. Everyone knows it. No one can prove it. You report threats to him. You might as well be reporting them directly to the Brennans. Grace looked at Lily's closed bedroom door. What do I do? Leave town. Tonight, if possible. With what money we can't even make rent. Carter had no answer to that. The harassment escalated. Someone slashed Grace's tires while she worked the night shift. The manager at the diner mentioned a man had come by asking questions about her schedule. Their mailbox was torn from the ground and thrown into the ditch. Lily stopped sleeping. Every creak of the trailer, every car that passed too slowly, she'd lie awake, her heart hammering, waiting for something terrible. Emma's mother. Kind but frightened. Gently suggested the girls spend less time together. Just until this blows over, she said, not meeting Grace's eyes. I'm sure you understand. Lily understood. She was toxic now. Dangerous to be near. First Shadow, now Emma. Everyone she cared about got taken away. 3 weeks after the letters started, Lily woke to the smell of smoke. She lay in bed for a confused moment, thinking she was dreaming. Then she heard her mother screaming her name. Lily, get out now. She stumbled from her room into chaos. Flames climbed the kitchen wall, orange and hungry. The trailer filled with black smoke that burned her lungs and blinded her. Grace grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the door. They burst outside into the cold night air, gasping and coughing. Neighbors emerged from their homes. Someone called 911. The volunteer fire department arrived within 15 minutes, but it was too late. The fire had spread too fast, consumed too much. They stood in the gravel driveway, barefoot and shaking, watching everything they owned burn. Lily wore her father's ranger jacket over her pajamas she'd taken to sleeping in it since Shadow left. That jacket, the clothes on their backs, and Grace's purse, grabbed reflexively on the way out. That was all they had left. Everything else turned to ash. The photo albums, Nathan's ranger badge, Lily's journals where she'd written to Shadow every night, the flannel shirt that still smelled like wolf. Gone. All of it gone. The fire marshal investigated the next morning, poking through the wreckage. Old wiring, he concluded. These trailers, they're fire traps. You're lucky you got out. But Grace saw something in his eyes when he said it. A flicker of doubt. Like maybe he suspected, but couldn't prove. Mrs. Patterson stood on her porch, watching the smoke clear. When Grace caught her eye, the older woman's expression held something that might have been satisfaction. The community response was mixed. Emma's family let them stay for 2 nights. The church offered 3 more. Other families donated clothes, food, small amounts of cash. People were kind, to a point, but kindness had limits. By the end of the week, Grace and Lily were living out of their car, parked behind the diner where Grace worked. They washed up in the restaurant bathroom. Lily did homework in a back booth. Grace picked up every shift available, working 16-hour days. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The hospital called about Lily's follow-up appointment. Grace couldn't afford the copay to even walk through the door. "We'll reschedule," she said, her voice hollow. "Mrs. Cooper, your daughter's condition is serious. She needs regular monitoring." "I understand. We'll reschedule." She hung up before they could hear her crying. Lily watched her mother unravel, watched her work herself to exhaustion and still apologize for not doing more. Watched her count pennies and make impossible decisions, gas to get to work or food for dinner, medicine for Lily or paying the phone bill so the hospital could reach them. One evening, sitting in the car in the dark parking lot, Lily spoke quietly. "Mom." "Yes, baby. I'm tired." "I know. We'll figure something out. We always do." "No." Lily's voice was eerily calm. "I mean, I'm tired. Of everything. Of being hungry and scared and losing everything. Of watching you kill yourself trying to keep me alive." Grace turned to look at her daughter. Really look. And what she saw terrified her. Lily's eyes were empty, hollow, the same eyes Grace had seen in the mirror after Nathan died. "Don't talk like that. Dad's gone. Shadow's gone. Our home is gone. I'm dying anyway. Mom, the doctors said so. Why are we pretending?" "Because you're 8 years old," Grace said fiercely. "Because you have your whole life ahead of you." "What life?" Lily's voice cracked. "I don't have anything. I'm not anything. Maybe it would be easier for everyone if I just..." Grace grabbed her daughter, pulling her close. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare finish that sentence." But the words hung between them anyway. That night, Grace called the crisis counselor the hospital had recommended months ago. The woman listened, asked careful questions, suggested immediate intervention. "Bring her in tomorrow. We have resources, support groups, treatment options." "I can't afford..." "There are programs, sliding scale. We'll work something out." After Lily fell asleep in the back seat, Grace sat alone in the driver's seat and made another call. "Rachel, it's Grace Cooper. I need to ask you something." "Of course. What's wrong?" "Everything." Grace's voice broke. "Everything is wrong. And I think Lily needs to see Shadow. One more time." "I know it's asking a lot. But she's..." The word stuck in her throat. "She's not okay. I'm afraid of what she might do." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "Bring her tomorrow. I'll arrange it." "Thank you." "Grace, how are you holding up?" Grace looked at her daughter, curled in the back seat of a car that had become their home, her face thin and pale even in sleep. "I'm not," she whispered, "but I don't get to fall apart. Not yet." She hung up and closed her eyes, too exhausted even to cry. Tomorrow Lily would see Shadow. Maybe that would help. Maybe something could still be saved from the ashes. But deep down, in a place Grace didn't want to examine too closely, she wondered if they'd already lost everything that mattered. The Montana Wildlife Center sat at the edge of vast forest land, its enclosures designed to mimic natural habitats. Lily had been here once before, the day they'd brought Shadow. She hadn't returned since. Couldn't bear to, but today was different. Today her third-grade class was on a field trip. 20 students chattering excitedly about seeing wolves and bears and eagles. Emma walked beside Lily, offering silent support. Grace had arranged it with Rachel the night before. A chance for Lily to see Shadow again under the guise of the school visit. Maybe it would help. Maybe it would make things worse, but they were out of options. Rachel met them at the entrance, her smile warm, but her eyes worried when they landed on Lily. The girl had lost weight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She moved like someone much older, burdened by invisible weight. "The wolf enclosure is this way," Rachel told the class. "Now, I need everyone to be quiet and respectful. These are wild animals, not pets. We observe from a distance." The students followed in an excited cluster. Lily hung back, her heart hammering. What if Shadow didn't remember her? What if he was happy now? Better off without her. What if he'd forgotten? The wolf enclosure was massive, acres of fenced forest. Rachel led them to a viewing platform with reinforced glass. "We have 4 wolves currently in residence," she explained. 3 from a pack relocated from Yellowstone, and 1 younger male who came to us after being illegally trafficked. There, through the trees, movement. Shadow emerged into the clearing, and Lily's breath caught. He'd grown enormous, easily 90 pounds now, all muscle and wild grace. His white-gray coat gleamed in the morning sun. He moved with the confident swagger of a healthy predator. He was beautiful. He was perfect. He was looking right at her. Rachel noticed the moment Shadow's attention fixed on the viewing platform. On Lily, specifically. The wolf's ears perked forward. His entire body went still, focused with an intensity that made several students step back nervously. "That one's staring at us," someone whispered. "At her." Another corrected, pointing at Lily. Shadow began walking toward the platform, not running, not aggressive, but deliberate, purposeful. He stopped at the glass and sat, his golden eyes never leaving Lily's face. "Oh my God," Rachel breathed. "He remembers." Lily pressed her hand against the glass. Shadow immediately stood and placed his paw against the same spot, his nose touching the barrier from the other side. The class fell silent, watching something none of them fully understood. "Can I?" Lily's voice cracked. "Can I go in, just for a minute?" "Absolutely not," the teacher said immediately. "That's a wild animal." But Rachel was already thinking. The isolation enclosure. They used it for introductions, for medical checks. Small, controlled, with double gates and safety protocols. And Shadow wasn't aggressive. She knew that. He'd never shown predatory behavior toward humans. "Give me 5 minutes," Rachel said. "Mrs. Henderson, can you keep the class occupied at the bear exhibit?" The teacher looked uncertain, but nodded. Emma squeezed Lily's hand before following the others. Rachel led Lily through staff-only areas to a smaller enclosure with reinforced glass on one side. "I'm going to bring Shadow in here. You'll be separated by the glass still, but you can interact more directly. I need you to understand, he's not the puppy you saved. He's a wolf now, fully grown. His instincts are different." "I understand." Rachel disappeared for several minutes. When she returned, Shadow was with her, on a reinforced lead. The moment he saw Lily through the glass, his entire demeanor changed. His tail began to wag that subtle wolf wag, not exuberant like a dog, but unmistakable. Rachel opened the gate to Shadow's side, released the lead, and quickly exited. Shadow immediately pressed against the glass, whining a sound Lily hadn't heard from him since he was small. "Hi," Lily whispered, kneeling so they were eye to eye. "Hi, Shadow. I missed you so much." Shadow's paw scraped at the glass. His nose left fog patterns on the surface. The sounds he made were heartbreaking, pure need, pure recognition. "I'm so sorry," Lily said, tears streaming. "I'm sorry I had to let you go, but you're okay now. You're healthy and strong, and you have space to run, and—" Her voice broke. "You don't need me anymore." But Shadow's behavior suggested otherwise. He paced, agitated, clearly wanting to reach her. When Lily placed both hands on the glass, he mirrored the gesture with his paws, standing on his hind legs. Rachel watched, documenting something she'd rarely seen: complete interspecies bonding maintained across months of separation. "Lily," Rachel said carefully, "there's something you should know about Shadow." "What?" "We ran his DNA for our records. He's not alone anymore." She pulled out a tablet, showing tracking data. "There's another wolf that's been circling our perimeter for weeks. We finally got close enough to get a sample. It's his brother, a full-blooded sibling from the same pack. We think their family was killed when they were both very young. Shadow's brother survived in the wild. He's been watching over Shadow from outside the fence." Lily looked at Shadow with new understanding. He has family, yes. And that wolf, we call him Ghost because we rarely see him. He's protective, territorial. He watches this facility like he's guarding it, as if summoned. A howl rose from somewhere in the forest beyond the fence. Shadow's head snapped up, ears erect. He answered with his own howl, the sound resonating through Lily's chest. She'd heard him howl before, in the trailer yard. But this was different, deeper, more primal, the call of wild to wild. "He belongs here," Lily said quietly, "with his brother, in the forest." "He does," Rachel agreed, "but he hasn't forgotten you. He never will." A commotion outside interrupted the moment. Raised voices. Someone screaming. Rachel's radio crackled to life. "Code red. Child in danger. Main parking lot. Repeat. Code red." Rachel bolted for the door. "Stay here. Lock this behind me." But Lily couldn't stay. That scream, she knew that voice. Emma. She ran, bursting out of the building in time to see chaos in the parking lot. A man had Emma by the arm, dragging her toward an old pickup truck. Travis Brennan. Lily recognized him from the surveillance photos Carter had shown Grace. Emma fought, screaming, but he was too strong. "Emma." Lily's scream cut through the panic. Travis turned, and his face twisted with recognition and rage. You little—" He shoved Emma hard. The girl fell, hitting her head on the pavement. She didn't get up. Rachel was sprinting from the facility, security guards behind her. But they were too far. 20 seconds, maybe 30. Not enough time. Travis pulled a knife from his belt. "Your family destroyed mine. Seems fair I return the favor." He took a step toward Lily, and that's when the fence exploded. Not literally, but a section of the maintenance enclosure, left open by workers on break, burst apart as 90 pounds of fury came through it. Shadow hit the ground running, his lips pulled back in a snarl that would haunt the nightmares of everyone who witnessed it. Travis barely had time to turn before Shadow was on him. The wolf didn't bite, didn't need to. He hit Travis like a freight train, knocking him flat. The knife skittered across the pavement. Shadow stood over the fallen man, his posture everything a wolf's threat display should be. Hackles raised, teeth bared, a growl that seemed to vibrate the air itself. Travis scrambled backward, terror blanking his face. "Get it off me, get it away." But Shadow wasn't done. He advanced, step by deliberate step. And Travis kept scrambling until his back hit the truck tire. Nowhere left to run. Then, something else emerged from the tree line. Bigger than Shadow, gray and silver and absolutely massive. Ghost, the brother. crossed into human territory for the first time in his life. The two wolves flanked Travis, creating a living cage of fangs and fury. The man curled into a ball, whimpering. By the time security reached them, Travis Brennan was sobbing, begging for mercy from animals that had more honor than he'd ever possessed. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Rachel reached Emma first, carefully checking her head wound. "She's okay. Conscious. Someone call an ambulance anyway." Lily knelt beside her friend. Emma, can you hear me?" Emma's eyes fluttered open. "Did you see that? Your wolf. He saved me." "I saw," and Shadow, satisfied that the threat was neutralized, turned and walked calmly back to Lily. He sat in front of her, waiting. When she reached out, he leaned in, letting her hand rest on his head. For one perfect moment, everything else disappeared. Just a girl and a wolf, connected by something deeper than words. Ghost watched from a distance, wary of humans, but unwilling to leave his brother. Rachel noticed staff slowly surrounding the area, prepared to safely guide both wolves back to the enclosure. "Shadow," Lily whispered. "You came back for me." The wolf's golden eyes held hers. If animals could make promises, his eyes made one now, always. But then the moment shifted. Shadow's attention moved to Ghost, to the forest beyond, to the wild calling him home. He looked back at Lily one final time. Then he turned and walked toward his brother. Together, the two wolves moved back toward the tree line. Staff followed at a respectful distance, ready to guide them safely back to the enclosure. Shadow paused at the fence opening, looked back once more. Lily raised her hand. "Thank you," she called, "for everything." The wolf's tail moved slightly acknowledgement. Perhaps, or maybe just coincidence. Then he was gone, disappeared into the trees with his brother. The police took Travis Brennan into custody 20 minutes later. Security footage had captured everything. The attempted kidnapping, the wolves' intervention, the rescue. Within an hour, the video was uploaded to the news. By evening, it had gone viral. "Wolf saved by 8-year-old girl returns favor," read one headline. "Miracle in Montana, $1 wolf rescues children," read another. And beneath the videos, in comments that numbered in the thousands, had $1 wolf, and Shadow saves back, had loyalty has no price. Grace arrived at the center 2 hours later, having heard the news at work. She found Lily sitting on a bench, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the forest. "Baby." Lily looked up at her mother, and Grace saw something she hadn't seen in months. Hope. Actual, genuine hope. "He remembered me, Mom. After all this time. He remembered." Grace sat beside her daughter and pulled her close. "Of course he did. Love doesn't forget." In the trees beyond the fence, two wolves watched over the facility where humans scurried and worried and slowly began to understand what had happened here. A bond that transcended species. Loyalty that transcended circumstance. A $1 miracle that had just saved 2 lives. The video played on every news channel from Seattle to New York. Security footage from 3 angles, crisp and undeniable. Travis Brennan dragging a child toward his truck, a girl screaming his name. And then impossibly, magnificently, a white-gray wolf exploding through the fence, followed by his wild brother. The footage showed Shadow standing over the fallen man, protective and fierce. Showed him returning to Lily, gentle as a lamb. Showed the moment of recognition between girl and wolf. A connection so pure it made millions of viewers catch their breath. The headlines wrote themselves. $1 wolf saves lives. Rescued wolf returns favor. Montana miracle when loyalty transcends species. By the second day, the story had reached international news. By the third, fundraising campaigns appeared across social media. #1 wolf trended globally. Artists created portraits. Musicians wrote songs. A children's book deal was offered and politely declined by Grace, who wanted no part of profiting from her daughter's pain. But the money came anyway. Unsolicited, unstoppable. A GoFundMe created by someone in California reached $50,000 in 6 hours. Another in Texas hit $75,000 by evening. Local businesses in Montana organized a benefit dinner. The state's governor publicly praised Lily's compassion and Shadow's loyalty. Within 2 weeks, the combined fundraisers had collected over $200,000, every penny designated for Lily's heart surgery. Grace sat in their borrowed room at Emma's family's house, staring at the laptop screen in disbelief. This isn't real. This can't be real. It's real, Mom, Lily said quietly. She'd been different since the incident, not quite happy too much had been lost for that. But something had rekindled inside her. Purpose. Maybe. Or simply the knowledge that she'd been seen. That she and Shadow mattered. Dr. Carter called that evening. Grace, I've been following the news. If you'll allow me, I'd like to perform Lily's surgery pro bono. I owe Nathan that much. I owe both of you that much. Grace couldn't speak for several seconds. Carter, we can't. You can. You will. Lily saved a wolf with $1. That wolf saved 2 children. Now let me save Lily. Let the circle complete itself. The surgery was scheduled for midsummer. But first, there was other business to attend to. The FBI had arrested Travis Brennan at the scene, of course. But his arrest triggered something bigger, under interrogation, facing decades in prison. Travis made a deal. He gave up his brother's location. Hank Brennan had been hiding in a remote cabin 60 miles north of Whitefish. FBI agents found him there 3 days after Travis's arrest, surrounded by evidence of wildlife trafficking spanning 5 states. Photographs of protected species, sales records, and among the documents, proof of something darker. Nathan Cooper's death hadn't been an accident. The ranger had been getting close to exposing the Brennan operation. Hank had arranged for a hunting accident during a fabricated pursuit. The official investigation had been deliberately sabotaged. By Sheriff Walton. The sheriff's arrest made almost as many headlines as Shadow's rescue. Corruption charges, obstruction of justice, accessory to murder. The investigation uncovered years of payoffs, evidence tampering, and blind eyes turned to criminal activity. Grace received the call from the FBI on a Tuesday morning. Mrs. Cooper, we wanted you to know your husband was murdered in the line of duty. His death wasn't an accident. We're reopening the investigation with full federal resources. Nathan Cooper will receive the recognition he deserves. Grace sat down slowly, the phone pressed to her ear. He knew. He was close to catching them. Yes, ma'am. Nathan was an exceptional ranger. His work ultimately led to the collapse of one of the largest wildlife trafficking operations in the region. It just took longer than it should have. After she hung up, Grace went to Lily's room. Her daughter was reading, or pretending to, the book unmoving in her lap. They caught the men who killed your father. Lily looked up, her eyes suddenly bright with tears. All of them. All of them. And they're saying Dad was a hero. that his investigation helped shut down the whole operation. Tired, Grace sat on the bed beside her daughter. He'd be proud of you. You know, proud of what you did for Shadow. Proud of who you are. I just gave him $1. You gave him a chance. Sometimes that's everything. The community response to the revelations about Nathan's death was immediate and powerful. The town organized a memorial service. His name was added to the ranger station's Wall of Honor. A scholarship fund was established in his memory for children interested in wildlife conservation. Mrs. Patterson appeared at the service, standing in the back. Afterward, she approached Grace and Lily, her face carefully neutral. "I owe you an apology," she said stiffly. "I was wrong about Shadow, wrong about a lot of things. I let fear turn me cruel." Lily looked at the woman who'd called her trash, who'd demanded Shadow's removal, who'd celebrated their suffering. She wanted to feel forgiveness, wanted to be gracious. But she couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "Thank you for saying that," Lily said carefully. "But some things take longer to forgive." Mrs. Patterson's face flickered hurt, then understanding. "That's fair. More than fair." She walked away, and Grace squeezed Lily's shoulder. "You don't have to forgive everyone who hurts you. Dad would have. Your father was a better person than most of us could ever hope to be. But even he had limits." Grace paused. "Forgiveness is earned, sweetheart. Some people never do the work to earn it." Lily's surgery took place on the first day of August. She went under anesthesia terrified and woke up sore but alive. The operation was a success. Her heart, patched and strengthened, beat steady and strong. Emma visited every day during recovery, bringing drawings and gossip and the normalcy of friendship. They'd become inseparable since the incident, bound by something most people never experience, having your life saved by the same miracle. While Lily recovered, other miracles unfolded. The fundraising money, after covering all medical expenses, left enough for Grace to put a down payment on a small house. Nothing fancy, a 2-bedroom at the edge of town, with a yard and a view of the mountains. But it was theirs. The community, still reeling from the revelations about Sheriff Walton and the Brennan brothers, rallied, volunteers helped with repairs, local businesses donated furniture. Emma's father, a contractor, supervised the work. The Montana Wildlife Center offered Grace a position as administrative coordinator. "We need someone who understands what we do here," Rachel said. "And frankly, you've earned the right to be close to Shadow if you want." Grace accepted immediately. Margaret Cooper, Lily's grandmother, sold her house in Seattle and moved to Montana. "I'm too old to be alone," she said practically. "And you two need family." She moved into the second bedroom, and for the first time since Nathan died, the house felt full, felt like home. Shadow and Ghost remained at the center, thriving in their expanded enclosure. The siblings were inseparable, often seen playing or hunting together in their forested territory. Ghost never warmed to humans, but he tolerated the staff because Shadow trusted them. Rachel established a special visiting protocol for Lily, once a week, supervised and controlled. She could spend time near Shadow's enclosure, the first visit after the surgery. Lily approached the viewing glass tentatively. 3 months had passed since the rescue. Would he still remember Shadow saw her from across the enclosure and immediately trotted over? He pressed his face against the glass, tail waving in that subtle wolf way, making soft sounds of recognition. "Hi," Lily whispered, placing her palm against the barrier. "I'm okay now. Thanks to you." Shadow's paw touched the same spot, their connection maintained across species and circumstance. Ghost watched from a distance. This wild brother who'd never been caught, never been tamed, but who'd still crossed into human territory to protect his sibling. Rachel was documenting their behavior for research purposes, amazed by the bond between the brothers and between Shadow and Lily. "This kind of imprinting is rare," Rachel told Grace one afternoon. "Shadow sees Lily as pack. That bond won't fade, even as he becomes more integrated with wild behaviors." One evening in late autumn, after visiting Shadow, Lily and Grace sat on the hood of their car, watching the sunset over the Montana mountains. "Do you ever wish we could keep him?" Grace asked. "Like it was before?" Lily considered the question seriously. "No. I mean, I miss having him close. But he needs this, the space, his brother, the life he was meant to have." She paused. "Loving someone doesn't mean keeping them trapped. Dad taught me that. When did you get so wise?" "When I bought a wolf for $1 and learned what it really means to let go." From somewhere in the forest beyond the wildlife center, a howl rose Shadow's voice, calling to his brother. A moment later, Ghost answered, deeper and wilder. The sound carried across the valley, primal and beautiful. Lily closed her eyes and listened to the wolves sing, her hand unconsciously moving to her chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of her repaired heart. She'd saved a wolf with $1. That wolf had saved 2 children. Those children's story had saved her. And somehow, impossibly, everyone she loved was still here, still fighting, still alive. "Thank you," she whispered to the mountains, to the wolves, to her father's memory. The wind carried her words away. But somewhere in the trees, a white-gray wolf paused and lifted his head, as if he'd heard. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness echo the loudest across our lives. Lily's single dollar wasn't just currency, it was a choice to see value where others saw waste, to offer mercy when the world offered cruelty. How many times have we walked past someone or something that needed us, convinced we had nothing to give? Grace worked herself to exhaustion trying to save her daughter, never realizing that the salvation had already begun with one small act of compassion. Nathan's legacy wasn't just in his badge or his investigations, it lived on in the daughter who inherited his ability to look into another creature's eyes and see truth. Shadow didn't save Lily because he was trained or obligated. He saved her because love, real love, transcends logic and circumstance. It remembers. It returns. It completes the circle. We spend so much of life afraid of losing what we love that we forget the simple truth. Sometimes loving means letting go. And sometimes what we release comes back in ways we never imagined. The bonds we forge, the mercy we show, the dollars we spend on hope instead of bread. These are the currencies that matter when everything else burns away. What's the $1 moment in your life that changed everything? Have you ever had to let go of something you loved, only to find it saved you later? Share your story below, because every act of loyalty, every moment of choosing kindness over fear, deserves to be remembered.